Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining. Very excited to be joined by Jessica and James from Checkatrade. I won't take up too much of the time, as I know I'm not the one you are here to listen to. But just for your information, any questions that you have throughout, drop it in the chat and I can help answer during the session, or we'll leave to Jessica and James for afterwards. And it will also be available on YouTube afterwards. So if you are watching retrospectively, drop any messages on Discord and we can help answer them and get them to the team too. So without further ado, I will pass over and thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks, Alex. So hello, I'm James. I'm joined by Jess. We're from Checkatrade and I have a lovely presentation to guide us through this talk. So we're going to be talking about recruitment at Checkatrade. I'm head of engineering at Checkatrade, and Jess is engineering manager. I'm gonna probably monologue for the first 10 minutes, and then I'll kick it over to Jess to carry on. So I just want to give you guys an idea about how we recruit in Checkatrade, how we structure our engineering department. Because I'm head of engineering, I'm probably going to be talking more about formations of teams and structures of departments and lots of engineering management stuff. And then Jess will give you a deeper dive into the actual teams and how we do the hiring. Does that sound good, Jess?
Yep, all good with me.
Good, perfect. Lovely. Cracking on. So Checkatrade, you've probably heard of us. If you're over 35, you've definitely heard of us. If you're under 35, there's a 50% chance that you've heard of us. That's how good our infiltration is into the market. So Checkatrade is actually a technology company, if you didn't know. Very, very high-powered, large website. We have 120 engineers inside of Checkatrade. We're based in Portsmouth is our HQ, but we have a lot of engineers inside of London. We have our own London office. I usually rank engineering companies by how many requests you get an hour. So I've given you some Cloudflare statistics here. These are the stuff I'm usually interested in. So 2 million requests an hour on a company level, £55 million in revenue. And yeah, we use Google Cloud, Datadog, Terraform, React Native and React as well. Node, Node.js, Next.js, and C#, and a bit of Go as well in the operations side as well. So we are a technology company. Most people don't really think of that because people associate us with trades and tradespeople and working with wood and chopping down trees and cutting grass. But we are actually a very large technology company. Hence, we are here and talking to you. I just want to get the idea out there that we are a great place to work. And I've decided to demonstrate that to you by showing you pictures of beautiful people that work here. But that is all just the surface of it. We do have great offices. We do have great people. We actually hosted our yearly Checker Fest. There's some pictures on the left there, where we just put a big old marquee outside of our offices, and we have team building events. And what was that, a week or two ago? It was quite recent. It was a great time. We've also a Great Place to Work certified, and I am obliged to tell you this because I want to encourage you to keep Checkatrade in your head as a technology company that you might want to work for. So, obligatory slide. Oh, no, more pamper about how good Checkatrade is. We have so many perks, and actually my favorite. So, how many perks is this? 1, 2, 3, 1 million. That's right. So, we have 1 million perks at Checkatrade. I think my favorite is actually the wellness cash plan, where I bought a pair of glasses the other day and it was just paid for by the company. And it's like walking around with free glasses. That's never happened to me before. I've actually never been in a company that has had so many benefits. That's how good it is. These were all animated, by the way, but they're all broken because of this fancy slide system. But hey, yeah, just more reassurance that we are a pretty good company to work for. So I want to take you through around some of the work I've been doing inside of Checkatrade with my CTO, Mal. We've both recently joined Checkatrade over the past year, and we've been doing a lot of work to structure the roles inside of engineering, because before we joined, it was just one big blob of senior engineers, and there wasn't really a very good definition about what it meant to be a junior or a mid or a senior, or how to progress your engineering career beyond senior, and it just wasn't really well defined, and people didn't really understand what they were aiming for when they were in Checkatrade. So me and Mal have come in, Mal the CTO, and we've put in place a engineering growth framework, which is what EGF stands for. And it's a big old document, and one of the slides looks like this. This is a flow diagram of how you progress as an engineer inside Checkatrade. And there are other documents like this that you'll find in very well-established engineering companies as well. But it hammers home the point that in order to progress as a senior or as an engineer, you don't have to take the management path. And this was a big flaw inside of Checkatrade before. And it was a big flaw in some of the previous companies we've been in as well, where if you were a senior engineer and you wanted a promotion, your promotion previously would have been into engineering management. And that's, funny enough, how I got into management. And I can tell you from first-hand experience, software engineering is a very different skill set from engineering management. Totally different, night and day. You do need some technological knowledge inside of engineering management because you are hiring engineers at the end of the day. But it's such a change in pace. And yeah, will I tell you the story? Sure, I'll tell you the story about how I got into engineering management. I've been a software developer for 15 years, and my manager came up to me and said, hey, James, I have this team over here. Do you want to line manage them? Could you just line manage them for a bit? And I said, well, what does that mean? What do you want me to do? He said, oh, just do their one-to-ones every week. It's no big deal. And so I said, oh, okay, well, that seems like no big deal. And then about 2 or 3 months into line managing this engineering team, they came to me and said, we have a problem. We can't decide between us how we should do a thing. We don't want to do the business thing, and we have our own priorities. What do we do, James? And I was faced with this human social puzzle that I found actually quite intriguing because I quite like solving puzzles. Anyway, that's how I got into engineering management. I quite like solving puzzles, and turns out humans are also a type of puzzle, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. So the skill sets between management and engineer are very, very different. It was a huge shock to me. So we had to make clear that if you want to progress as a senior engineer, there is a route for you, and it allows people to really grow as engineers as well. So I'm very proud of this. On one step lower than this are the actual definitions of each role. And I'm not talking about necessarily job descriptions or job adverts, but about a definition of what people do day to day as a associate engineer or a mid-level engineer. And they are very different roles in terms of scope. So in order to give people clarity about what they're expected to do in their roles, we wrote slides, and here's one of them for associate engineer or junior engineer, about what you do as an associate and how you do it in associate. So I'm just going to pick some things out on here. As an associate engineer, you are to acquire basic skills, behaviors, and knowledge necessary as a professional engineer. And that's a very complicated way of saying you're there to learn. As a junior engineer inside of Checkatrade, your primary goal is to learn. And right there at the bottom as well, your goal is to become the next level of engineer within 18 months. And actually, that's much more achievable in a much shorter amount of time. But that is your goal. And this is why I miss being a junior engineer myself, because you could spend all your day just learning. There wasn't so much expectations or responsibilities on you. You just learn programming, and you were able to work inside of a team with seniors, and they could teach you about how things work to make you better. That's what we do in Checkatrade now. And Jess will tell you more about that junior role as we go forward. But it's very important that we very explicitly define what it means to be a junior so that we're not overburdening people. Now, I'm speaking from a managerial point of view, of course. There is also the mid-level slide here. I'm not going to go through all of these. This is the last one I'll just touch on. The difference between a junior and a mid, for example, is the scope of work that you deal with and the responsibility laid upon you inside of the team. So as a junior, you're working on very small, well-defined problems, right? With lots of help from your other team members. So we're talking about bugs on individual web components, or we're talking about small scope things, right? On a very small level. Now it goes right up to senior and principal, where you're working on whole projects and whole initiatives inside of Checkatrade, where it is your responsibility as a principal or a senior engineer to be able to take an idea or a project and build it from scratch and run with it completely. Now, inside of mid-level, here I'm showing you the mid-level engineering growth framework slide. Mid-level is somewhere in between. Big surprise. So it says on the top left there, operate in a pod. I'll talk about what a pod is in a second, and independently own the entire life cycle of small to medium projects of medium complexity in your area of expertise. And all of that just shouts mid-level. So you're talking about building single web pages. You're talking about building individual web components, and you're talking about maybe building even a CI/CD pipeline, if you know what that means. That's what we're expecting from mid. So these definitions of these roles are extremely valuable to people to understand what it means to be in their role and how to progress into the next level. All right, so I think that was the accumulation of about 3 months' work putting together this framework, and it's been extremely positively received inside of Checkatrade. And yeah, I am exceptionally proud of the work we've done there. It's been exceptionally well received. So I've been talking a little bit about pillars and pods and what does that mean. So you're obviously familiar with the concept of a development team, but we've called those pods, and the engineering departments are called pillars. So we have 4 pillars inside of Checkatrade, and they are responsible for a persona of Checkatrade users. And by persona, I mean a homeowner. I'm head of engineering for homeowner, and a homeowner is a person who has a home, funnily enough, comes to Checkatrade looking for a trade to fix their wall, mow their grass. So that's the homeowner pillar. There's also a trade pillar, who is responsible for the business-to-business side of Checkatrade, where trades come to Checkatrade, pay a subscription to be vetted and assured to be listed on the Checkatrade website. There is also a transformation pillar, which is working on the agent tooling inside of Checkatrade. So we have lots of phone agents and sales agents, and that pillar is dedicated to those personas of internal agents or staff inside of Checkatrade who can use the back-end UI to mess with trades and modify their profiles when they call up. And the last pillar is actually the platform pillar, and this is a pillar that's in charge of helping all the other developers inside of Checkatrade to help them build things faster by building commonly used components like the monitoring stack or the logging stack or the alerting stack. And the platform pillar does a really great job of supporting all of the development teams. So that's what I mean by pillars. Pillars are like engineering departments inside of Checkatrade, and the pods are the individual engineering teams. And I'll show you what a pod looks like. So a pod inside of Checkatrade is typically 4 engineers and an engineering manager at top. And that's it. 4 engineers. And that's a very different structure to a lot of the other companies I've been in. I've seen engineering teams who are 8 people large. I've seen in the previous company I was at there was actually 2 people. And I think I've seen as large as 16 people in the team. I've chosen 4 inside of Checkatrade because I think that's about as large of a team as you can get to have these close personal and understanding relationships with every other engineer in your team. If it goes above 4, in my mind at least, this is also a very controversial opinion, but I think if it goes above 4, you can't have as close of a connection with your other engineers as it was. And also, in contrast to having just 2 engineers in a team, if someone goes sick or on holiday, it's not such of a bigger hit if there were 4 engineers inside of a team. So we've chosen 4 engineers. A 2-pizza team is a very common phrase that's come out of Amazon. I believe 4 engineers is 2 pizzas, at least at the rate that I eat pizzas, but I may be severely swayed in that opinion. So yeah, the idea of 4 engineers is to allow that close collaboration and trust between your engineers. And I'll just say one last thing. This is all very managerial chat because I am an engineering manager and a head of engineering. So this is what you're going to get from me. But what I found is that when you have 8 engineers in a team, or even 5, what I found is that engineers tend to split off into their own little mini teams inside of those teams and work on things themselves and don't really communicate with each other. So to have a small enough team sort of allows people to work together in one group comfortably. That's my opinion. So this is what a pod is. This is what a team is, right? It's 4 engineers, and you have a staff engineer at the top, which is the technical lead for the team. So they're responsible for all the architectural decisions, the technical decisions. They are in charge of the technical capacity of the team as well. Senior engineer is one level down from that, who is in charge of large projects, large ticket items, and to assist the staff engineer in that. And then the 2 other engineers can either be mid-level or junior engineers. And previously, we didn't have this in Checkatrade. Previously in Checkatrade, the majority of our engineers were seniors or above, and there wasn't this gradient of levels inside of the pod. And that's quite important, and Jess will talk about that a bit more in a second. But what we've chosen as a pod structure is a staff engineer at the top, a senior engineer, and then 2 other engineers is my ideal pod. And in a pillar is composed of many pods. So inside of the homeowner pillar, I've got 5 or 6 pods, can't remember off the top of my head, and 3 engineering managers. And an engineering manager typically is in charge of 2 of those pods, 1 to 2 of those pods, no more, really. I think that's about the right amount of cognitive load. And cognitive load is a term from team topologies. If you're interested in how teams are created, I recommend you read team topologies. So I think that's about enough of my waffling. I think Jess can take over now. Over to you.
Thanks, James. So hi, everyone. I'm Jess. I'm an engineering manager at Checkatrade. So now I'm going to dive a bit more deeper into how the teams are structured and what it means to be a junior in Checkatrade and some of the onboarding processes we have, etc. So I'm just going to kick off with the ideal structure. So to follow on from James, as he said, we're trying to follow a triangle structure of talent at the moment. So where you can see at the bottom, engineers as at associate level, that also means junior engineers. These would be predominantly, we want more junior engineers within the organization, within engineering. We then want to be followed by slightly less mid-level engineers. And then the senior and the staff engineers are going to be the ones where they are very few in the organization because they have very, very big roles. They predominantly, I guess, they have a lot more responsibility. So they have a lot more to manage and they're making a lot of those big level decisions. So that's why we have less of them, because they are a lot of the decision makers. They're helping us with our architecture and what they say kind of feeds down into the rest of the engineers. So joining as an associate, you would have a lot of guidance from the staff engineers and the senior engineers who generally lead the teams in those directions, decisions in terms of architecture, technical details, working, etc. So just moving on to why are junior engineers important to us? So I think there are many reasons why we want to encourage more junior engineers to join us. We've recently gone for a shift of wanting more junior engineers, and we've actually had a few shifts recently where we've had people shift from different roles in the company and actually start their first engineering role as an associate engineer. And we found it to be hugely beneficial. So I've actually had a junior engineer join one of my teams recently. And I feel like one of the biggest things for me is adding a new perspective. So when I say new perspective, you've got someone joining the team who maybe hasn't been a software engineer before. So again, this is at associate level. They've not been an engineer before. So when they come into the team, they're asking a lot more questions. They're helping the senior engineers mentor and coach them and giving them more opportunities as well. And I think that's really great to see. I love seeing the team dynamic when we have a junior on board. Again, just asking some of those questions that you generally wouldn't get from a senior. And I think it prompts a lot more conversations within the team. And I found the team to be working, a lot better and exploring a lot more ideas with a junior in the team. So again, one of my top 5 is new perspective. Another top thing is culture add. So when I say culture add, for those of you who don't understand what that means, culture add is just adding, again, people who maybe don't think the same, people who think a bit differently, people from different backgrounds. So there's an example of having a company where, people often hire and think about culture fit. So hiring people who are of the same, the same minds, the same thought processes. And then you end up with potentially a team of engineers who just prefer to work independently because they all have this same working style, so they can work more independently, and that's fine. But I really encourage culture add because I think it means you've got different ideas in the team and people can, they can bounce ideas off each other. And it's really great because in a place like Checkatrade, we have so many new projects coming up. We're constantly being asked to do new projects or think about new features. And that's the really fun thing about working in a company like Checkatrade, is always having something new to think about. And with that, having all of these new projects and new ideas, we need people like that to, be able to bounce ideas off each other. So I think having a team full of different ages, different cultures, different genders is just so beneficial when it comes to doing those bigger projects. Next thing, so career progression. Again, James was showing you the careers matrix earlier, and something as an engineering manager that makes me really, really happy is seeing career progression. So, hiring in a junior engineer and helping a junior engineer progress with that careers matrix, I think it's such a wonderful thing to see for the company, for me as an EM, for their team members. And the fact that we are a company who now has that careers matrix in place means that we can offer that level of career progression at a rate you want to progress. And I think as an engineer, that's so important, especially as a first job. You really want to be joining a company that offers that career progression. They've got they've got different levels in place. They have well-defined roles and responsibilities, and that allows you to understand what you do in your role and how you can potentially get to the next role. So little backstory, I originally joined, when I joined Rightmove, I was a graduate engineer many years ago. And I think one of the things that helped me progress into who I am today, an engineering manager, is having a really good careers matrix, having good managers around me, and having a framework where I could understand, okay, well, do you know what? I quite like doing management now. So when I got to a senior level engineer, I was quite interested in doing more of the team leading stuff. And I realized that I preferred some of the roles and responsibilities that were in an EM role. And then that's what made me realize, oh, okay, well, this is what I want to focus on now. So again, having those defined paths can really help you decide what you want to do next, and how you can do that as well. So yeah, I think that's hugely important. And then a few other things. So obviously, hiring in juniors generally helps us create a more diverse and inclusive environment. So it's a known fact that nowadays we are lucky that we're seeing a rise in women coming into engineering, which I think is really great. And that's why, again, I love to look at hiring juniors. I think it promotes more diversity and inclusion, and it helps us have new perspectives, different perspectives within the team as well. So yeah, that's a summary of why I think junior engineers are really important to us. So next thing I'm going to talk about is where to find jobs when they come available. So we have a career site at the moment. So we've got a little section on Checkatrade, which would list a lot of our jobs in engineering. So if you go onto our career site, which we can probably post a link for after, you can type in engineering in the search and you'll see all of the engineering roles. So if you want to go direct and apply direct to us, that's where you would find our roles. And just a note on that, we will be having some junior roles coming up probably within the next 2 weeks or so. So again, I welcome you to go onto our career site in the next week or two, search up engineering, and any role that says engineering associate, that's going to be junior engineer. So engineering associate is the same as a junior engineer. And there are other ways as well. So something I found useful throughout my career is browsing on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is hugely useful. I can imagine most of you are on LinkedIn already, and I think it's a great place to learn about different roles on the market. And I know myself and James and other people in Checkatrade, we're constantly trying to post on LinkedIn so we can network with people and meet new people and get a wider range of people applying to our roles as well. So I would definitely recommend, if you don't have LinkedIn already, definitely get on LinkedIn. I think it's a great thing as a junior to start networking early on, start talking to new people, follow some engineering managers or heads of engineering, because these are going to be the people who are posting those roles and updating their networks if they have roles available. And then the last one is jobs boards. So you've got jobs boards such as Indeed, Total Jobs, etc. Again, similar to LinkedIn, but these are more specific searches. So you can search for specific jobs in a specific area, and then you get back whatever you search in. So those are, I guess, three of the main ways to search for jobs when they become available. So what do we actually look for in applications? So something that I always say is, when you apply to a place, you don't always have to 100% fit the job description. And reasons being is that in a company like Checkatrade, we're very open to helping people progress. And the most important for me, hiring in as an engineering manager, is I want to see that you can learn and you're motivated and you're keen to progress yourself. And for me, that's way more important than having all of the skills already tick box. I think as long as you've got that motivation, the ability to learn, and you really want to progress in your career, then that's going to be a really, really great start. But aside from that, we generally have a list of roles and responsibilities within our job descriptions, and there'll be a mixture of technical skills. So you'll probably see quite a few different languages on there. And again, most people applying in as software engineers, you'll probably know, but we can all be very language agnostic. So you may see a language that you haven't used so much before, but it's very likely that you can adapt to a new language and you may be able to learn more on the job as well. So as James was mentioning earlier, a lot of what you do or your day-to-day as a junior engineer, associate engineer coming in, you would have a lot of learning time structured. And that's something we really encourage our junior engineers to do. So it's not about knowing C#, to your best abilities. It's about understanding coding principles in general, and then coming in and using your learning time to upskill yourself. So if you're someone who likes learning and has a lot of passion to learn, then I think that's a really great means to apply. A few other skills. So obviously problem solving, one of the main areas of focus as an engineer is just solving problems in general. We have problems all the time. We have new projects working on all the time, and that involves a lot of problem solving as a team and as an individual. So it's always great if you enjoy problem solving. Certificates in education. So again, it's about, I think we've generally opened up a lot more in the last 2 years because there are so many boot camps around and so many different ways people can gain certificates from doing online courses. And it's not just university degrees that we accept. It's the boot camps, the certificates, the work you do, if you have portfolios online, stuff like that. I think all of that stuff is really, really great to see. So again, whatever you have, I always welcome any form of just showing what you've achieved and what you've done in terms of engineering and coding and development. And we've got aligning with company culture and values. So again, that's just understanding what you're looking for as a person, and if you feel like you would be part of a great part of the company, and if you would fit in. And again, it's the culture add as well. So where I was mentioning before about adding in people who have different perspectives so that the teams can bounce ideas off each other and work together, because a lot of what we do at Checkatrade is teamwork, and the teams are we're very small teams, which means we're very close knit and we work together a lot. So just following and aligning with those team values and company culture really helps a lot in your smaller teams. Just as well as collaboration and soft skills. So we're constantly working either in our teams, and we work very cross-pod as well. So in our pods, you may find that certain projects you'll work with other teams as well. And, it's a really great way to connect with other people in engineering. So I'm going to go a bit through what we do in the interview process. So we've got 5 steps here. The initial screening would be a very short kind of initial intro, just learning a bit about yourself. That would most likely be between yourselves and myself, an EM or a head of engineering. And that's a way of us finding out what you want to learn, what you want to do, as well as you can find out more about what you would be doing in the particular role, what your day-to-day responsibilities would be, and if that aligns with what you're looking for as well. So a screening is a very simple and short call just to find out if we align on the roles and responsibilities and what you would be doing in your role. We then would go on to a first interview. So that would be a more in-depth interview, and that's more likely to be with, again, either an EM or a head of engineering. That would probably have some questions around technical competencies, how you work with a team, your different working styles, maybe what you understand about working in engineering or about your previous experiences. Again, at this point, as a junior engineer or an associate engineer, we wouldn't expect you to have so many past experiences. It may be your first job you're going into. You may have just graduated or whatever it is, but it's just about understanding your experiences, whether that's in uni and, you've been working in groups and doing group projects before. I think any kind of group projects and experiences like that are hugely valuable to talk about in your first stage interview. We would then move on to the coding exercise. So you've passed the first interview and the screening. You've got a little coding exercise. And again, this is most likely to be testing some basic coding principles. It wouldn't be something that's, a huge, long coding test. And we often like to do it as a pairing coding test as well. So you'll be working with another engineer and you'll be solving a small problem. And we would want you to take it as a pairing exercise. So you would be discussing with that engineer, going back and forth. And it helps us see how you work with other engineers as well. The questions you ask and how you see the problem and how you solutionize as well. And I think that's the most important thing. So more important than, getting the right answer as quick as possible. It's about your collaboration and how you work with an engineer, and what exactly are your different working styles and what you understand of the problem. So it's more about the problem solving and the collaboration than getting the correct answer in the quickest possible time. We've then got the final interview. So this is more of a cultural interview. So that's more likely to be maybe with some other members of our engineering department, more about yourself and what you like doing, maybe a bit more on your experiences, maybe on your side projects as well. So often this is a good time to talk about any side projects you do or any interests outside of work or university or your coding boot camps. And I think that really helps us, again, understand you as a person and, match you to the correct team. And I think that's the main purpose of the final interview, is working out where you could potentially fit into a team based on you as a person as well. And then last but not least, if you pass those 4 stages, then you would receive an offer from our recruitment team. And that would detail, the team you'd be going into, the salary, and all the other details that you would need to know. And that summarizes the interview process. So let's say you have got an offer at Checkatrade. What would your first month look like? So the first month can be quite intense, just because we like to keep junior engineers very busy. So you've always got something in your schedule, and you definitely don't need to worry about sitting around and doing nothing and wondering, how do I be an engineer? So let's start with week 1. We actually have a Checkatrade induction. So as James mentioned, we have offices in Portsmouth as well, and that's one of our main hubs. It's super big there, really nice. And you've got all the other teams you can think of outside of engineering as well. So everyone goes down to Portsmouth, every new joiner, not just in engineering as well. And there's an induction that goes on every month. So you'll be joined with quite a few other people, and you would learn about Checkatrade as the wider business, what we do. You would have an intro to all of the different teams in Checkatrade, and learn a bit more about what those teams do. And I actually joined about 4 months ago, and I can say that the induction was quite useful in just understanding how the wider business is structured. And being in engineering, we obviously fit with a lot of different parts of the company that you won't necessarily work with day to day, but they may be stakeholders in your projects. And you may eventually have some communications with some of the stakeholders. So I think it was just a really useful session to get to know people and understand who your potential stakeholders might be and what kind of teams you're working with as well. Also in week 1, you would obviously meet your team. So you'd be introduced into your pod, you'd have introductions to everyone in your team, and then you'll start joining your team in their kind of meetings and their ceremonies and what they do day to day. Most importantly, machine setup. So you would receive your laptop pretty much on day 1. That would get set up for you. And then you would sit alongside someone in a team who would help you with machine setup, maybe installing some of the things you need on your machine, the IDEs, etc. And then pulling some of the repos onto your machine as well. You would then have a buddy intro. So something we're really keen on pushing at the moment is every new starter who's an associate or junior who joins will have a buddy, and that's going to help them, I guess, have a person who they can go to, that go-to person who they can ask questions to whenever they're stuck on what to do. And that doesn't just have to be technically or with code. It can be absolutely anything. I think that's the most important thing about having a buddy, is just having someone who you know, who you can go to for absolutely anything, especially in your first week, your first month, even your first 2 months. I think that buddy is going to play a really important role in just helping you settle in. And then lastly, we've got the onboarding. So I'll go a bit more through the onboarding after this, but the onboarding is typically 2 weeks long. It's quite an intense onboarding, and I won't say too much now because I'm going to go into it in a bit. So week 2, you would probably start to meet the wider engineering department. So you would be introduced to maybe a few different pods within your pillar. You might even meet some people from different pillars as well. And this would probably come from being in the office a bit more, joining a lot more meetings with your team, and having some more of those cross-team communications. We do have a few community forums as well. So we've got a Women in Tech forum. So that's a really nice place where you can actually meet the other women in engineering within Checkatrade. So we have meetups. We try to do them once a month or so. But if we had a new joiner, I think we'll definitely hold a more regular meeting as well, just to introduce new joiners. We've got some shadowing that would also go on in week 2. So shadowing would typically be sitting with an engineer, watching their day-to-day and how they work. We've got team ceremonies. So as I mentioned, you'll start to join your team meetings. So what I mean by team ceremonies is all of the meetings that the team have in place to help them complete their sprint life cycle. I'm not going to go into sprints and whatever that is right now, but let's just call that team meetings for now. And then you would finish your onboarding, and that would be week 2 of your onboarding done. So week 3, so as I mentioned, onboarding is 2 weeks. So week 3, that would be time for you to talk with your EM about your onboarding feedback. It's a good time to bring up things that you maybe want to focus on in the future, maybe any learnings that you found interesting, maybe any training that you're interested in, etc. You would also be involved in some hands-on pairing now. So a bit different from shadowing. Hands-on pairing is typically you're actually sitting with an engineer and you're taking turns in maybe driving some code now, and you might even do your first push to GitHub. So that would be, in week 3. And finally, week 4, you would probably be assigned your first small ticket. So this might be a small bug ticket, maybe a smaller task within the team's workload. And you would, again, be probably pairing with another engineer to do that. You would have a lot of guidance along the way, but you would, be given a bit more independence to, if you're comfortable, pick up a smaller ticket and work on it as independently as you like to. We would also go through what's called engineer leveling. So as we previously looked at the roles and responsibilities of an engineer, that would be your time to go through those roles and responsibilities with your EM, your engineering manager, and understand what you would be doing in your role, and start setting some goals as well. So something we're really keen on in Checkatrade is goal setting. So that's a really big driver of our bonuses at the end of the year as well. And it's a really big driver of career progression. So as I've said many times, and we're really big on career progression and helping people move up the ladder. It's something we all want to see and we all love to see. So part of that is setting goals to figure out how you can get to the next level and, even more. So I said I'll talk more about the onboarding process. As soon as you join, within the first 2 weeks, you would be presented with a 2-week onboarding calendar. This is just a slight snippet. You might not be able to see much here, but it's kind of like what we would do as a team, what your team would do for you. So these are different sessions that would be scheduled within a 2-week period. So we've only got week 1 of the onboarding here, but there are set sessions that your team would be tasked with introducing you to. So this could be a mix of technical sessions to more product focused sessions to what we're working on in the future, maybe understanding some of the team meetings and what they actually mean. And each team member in your pod would take the opportunity to go through a few of those topics with you. And then that way you're being introduced to different people in your team as well. And it's a really great way to spend time with more people in your team. So by the end of the 2 weeks, you would have spent, a good amount of time with every single member of your team. Also within the onboarding calendar, you would have self-learning time. So something that we encourage daily, even within your onboarding, is having some self-learning time. So with that self-learning time, it's you would be given maybe a list of courses and resources, maybe documents on Confluence and to do with your team. And that would be your time to, take time to yourself and do your own reading or practical courses or whatever you want to do in that time. Team meetings, that would also be part of the onboarding process. So you would start to be introduced to your team meetings. And then we've got shadowing as well. So as I mentioned, you would have maybe daily or every other day sit with an engineer and just basically learn what they're doing day to day and what they're working on. And then last but not least, hands-on pairing, that would come quite late into week 2. So probably your final 2 days of week 2. Once you've had all your sessions, you've had some self-learning time, you've had all of the shadowing with the engineers, you might get onto the hands-on pairing where, again, you're actually contributing now in a very small way, very incrementally, still sitting with another engineer, but you're probably going to do your first push to GitHub then. So yeah, that pretty much summarizes Checkatrade and what we're doing with juniors at the moment and our structure and everything else. So yeah, any questions?
I just want to chip in before we go to questions. Where this onboarding program and this engineering framework that we just demoed, they don't exist in every tech company, and certainly not in any tech company I've used to work with. So this is a huge plus point for Checkatrade that we've implemented, and we are very proud of it. And we've had some juniors go through it. It's made for people like you, the people who are watching right now. What we've done to build the engineering growth framework and the onboarding program for juniors, it's for you specifically. So we're very keen and very, very proud of it. And a couple of points as well on some of the things that Jess said is that when we talk about certificates that are helpful for you to apply for jobs, this is something I didn't know when I was an engineer. There are free certificates out there on Coursera and on some Google sponsored stuff. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are a lot of free certificates that I will definitely entertain and be quite interested in if I see that on a CV. Yeah, that's all the things I wanted to go through. Yes.
Well, thank you both very much. Like you said, I think just touching on what you were saying at the end there as well, James, like definitely not everyone, as I'm sure a lot of our attendees that have been looking and applying for various places will know that companies don't often have this type of framework and this type of extensive thing. So I think hearing the work that's gone into it all and the effort and how it all works has been super interesting. So thank you both for your time there. There were a few questions in the chat, so I'll go through them in order. So starting off with, how many years of experience would an associate engineer have?
Yeah, I can take that one. So as an associate engineer, as I mentioned, it's pretty much interchangeable with a junior engineer. So this could be anyone coming in at a very entry level with entry level experience, meaning they may not have had their first role yet. They may have done courses or boot camps or be coming out of university. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to have that industry experience yet. That's what the onboarding program is for, and that's what the junior onboarding program is specifically made for.
Amazing. I think that's great, and hopefully a positive for a lot of our attendees. Like, I think a lot of kind of people taking their first journey into the tech industry. So yeah, hopefully that kind of accessibility for them is great too. Kind of on that note, I guess there was another question around whether you guys offer any remote working. I think someone was based in the Midlands, so just kind of understanding, I guess, what that process looks like.
Yeah, we sure do offer remote working. We've got quite a few remote engineers that are interweaved in many of our teams. We are open to remote working. Absolutely. We've seen it work quite well over COVID, and yes, we do hire remotely.
Nice. Then a question from Rosanna around, would the coding exercise be in a specific language? So obviously, Jessica, you mentioned kind of like language agnostic within the company and picking up stuff. So will you guys be in a specific language, or is it?
So with the coding language, it's probably going to be based around, I know the front-end one we do in React at the moment, JavaScript, but we plan to make them a bit more language agnostic as well. Maybe just understanding the principles and the object-oriented principles, that's more than enough to go through the coding exercise, to be honest.
And these coding exercises, they are pairing as well. So if you're talking through your thought process, then that's enough, really. You don't need to necessarily understand. And you can ask the interviewer questions about what does that curly brace mean and what does this influence or inference mean. It's more about how you're collaborating with another engineer rather than your actual coding specific knowledge.
Amazing. And then a question from Amy of, if the 1 year's experience as a junior data engineer, should I apply for the data engineer role or wait for an associate role to come up?
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. So if you have less than 1 year experience as a junior data engineer, yes. should they apply for the data engineer role or wait for an associate role to come up? That's a good question. I would wait for an associate role to come up, to be perfectly honest. So one thing about applying for jobs, if you're looking for a job, I would just apply to as many jobs as possible. So one thing that I'm trying to get across with my job adverts in Checkatrade is that even if you don't meet all of the requirements, if we say C# and JavaScript, then maybe C# but not JavaScript. I know some people might be put off and not apply at all. Apply. I speak on behalf of every tech company here. Apply to every job, even if you don't meet all of the requirements. So that's sort of a contradiction to what I said at the start, to just wait for an associate engineer role. So you should apply. Why not? Maybe someone will look So I am hiring some staff engineers inside the homeowner department at the moment, and I'm hiring a engineering manager as well. I have interviews with junior engineer managers as well, and I do consider them for junior roles, even though I'm not specifically interviewing for. Even though I haven't put out a job advert specifically for a junior engineer, I will consider junior roles while interviewing for these mid-level senior roles as well. So certainly my advice when I'm looking for a job, I apply for everything, even if it's vaguely associated with what I'm interested in. I don't know what you think about that, Jess. Maybe I've just talked people into flooding your application.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely going to agree with James on that one. I think there are so many benefits of applying rather than not applying. At the end of the day, even if it's not necessarily the right leveled role for you, you're going to get a great learning experience going through that process and understanding what kind of roles you should be looking for as well. So one thing that I would definitely say is if I'm interviewing for, I don't know, a mid-level engineer, but I get someone who's more junior, I would definitely recommend them or keep them in, on our file for when a junior engineer role does come up. And I think that's the most important thing, is the networking, the speaking to people, practicing the interviews is really, really important, especially as a junior.
Amazing. And then there was just a final one for Satna around, will the slate available? I think we're going to post this session as a whole on to YouTube anyway. And I think, Satna, if you're on the Discord server, I can speak to the team and see if we can get some of the slides and certainly make some more content from this, because I think, like I say at the start, having that into the program that you guys offer is really handy. And I think something that hopefully, as we can see on this, a lot of our community are interested in. And for those that haven't been able to make it, it'd be good to go through. So yeah, there'll hopefully be a couple of different ways to access that. And then another one for Amy actually is the whole application process online.
Yes, it's all online. You get interviewed online. You submit online. You get an offer online. We don't ask you to come into the office to receive a formal application letter. You are hereby. No, we do ask that you come into Portsmouth on your first day, on your first 2 days, to see the office and get through the induction program and meet all the different departments. And that's actually a really exciting experience. But in terms of the application, yeah, you apply online. It's all online.
Amazing. Well, thank you both very much for your time, and thank you everyone for joining as well. I think from my point of view, it's been really great to understand a bit more about the processes and what you guys have set up at Checkatrade. I think you've said how proud of it you are, and I think from what we've seen over the past few years, it's definitely one of the most kind of comprehensive and kind of inclusive that we've seen. So yeah, I think it all sounds great, and hopefully a lot of our attendees will be as interested as we are and will be applying. So anyone watching it back, let us know on Discord if you have any questions. But a big thank you, James and Jessica, for your time. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks so much.
See you later.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.